Thank you for listening to the Living Zen-podcast. If you've been listening for a while and are wondering how you can take the next step in developing your own Zen practice, or how you can more formally connect with our community, please explore our online Orientation to Zen practice, which you can find on our website at zenwest.ca. If you enjoy the resources that we make available online, we would very much appreciate your support. There are a number of ways that you can help us continue to do the work we do. One of the best ways is by becoming a part of our community as an associate. Your commitment of $10 a month will ensure that offerings like the Living Zen-podcast, eZendo, and our online Orientation to Zen will continue to be available around the world to everyone with an interest in truly living Zen. To become an associate, please visit our website at zenwest.ca and click on Become an Associate. Many more Zen Talks are available for purchase on iTunes and at Amazon.com. Just search for Venerable Eshu Martin. These talks are also made available for free on our website for all of our members and associates. You may also want to download the Living Zen Podcast app, which makes downloading and listening to the podcast effortless. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening to Living Zen. This Sunday, September 2nd, was an anniversary for me. It was the 30th anniversary of my mother's death. When I was 9 years old, my mother had a stroke, and after a couple of weeks of being in intensive care, she passed away. It's an important anniversary for me because I look at this event as really being the genesis of my Zen practice. Certainly a difficult, traumatic event. And I wouldn't say that I started doing Zen practice right away. No. In a lot of ways, this event pushed me in the opposite direction, towards a life of separation and anger. Death is one of what's called in Buddhism the four messengers. The story goes that when the Buddha was born, there was a prophecy that was told about this young child. And it was that either he was going to ascend the throne and become a Chakravadin, a wheel-turning king, like an emperor, or he was going to cast off the world, leave home, and become a Buddha, a great teacher of all beings. And his father, the story goes, didn't want him to become a Buddha. He wanted him to make him proud. He wanted him to become this great king. And so it was generally understood that there were certain areas or certain aspects of life that would encourage a person to become introspective, that would encourage a person to take up a life of self-examination, religion, for lack of a better word. And so the king, his father, systematically went about eliminating, reducing the young prince's exposure to these elements. And the elements are sickness, old age, and death, and of course spiritual practice itself. And I remember when I first heard about the story of the Buddha, it seemed really absurd to me, really kind of ridiculous. And I thought to myself, how could a person eliminate somebody else is coming across these kinds of things. They would have had to make an extreme effort to reduce this, eliminate it. And that's what the story says. But it just always seemed so ridiculous to me. That was until in my 20s, I started volunteering and doing work at the Victoria Hospice. What I started to realize was that most people in their life, even getting into their 20s, 30s, 40s, have never spent any time at all in the presence of a dead body. This is an odd thing, because every person that's ever born into this world dies. And yet we can spend a huge amount of our lives and never be in the presence of a corpse, a dead body. It started to occur to me that this is very much the way that we live in our culture. This king's efforts to eliminate the stimuli that would inspire a life of introspection is our culture. Most of us have never been in the presence of an open, festering wound, disease. Most of us spend as little time as possible in the presence of old people. They smell funny, we say. They're strange and they don't understand the modern era. And if we look at the way that we structure our society, we have little boxes that we like to put these people in. And when somebody's sick, we get them out of the general population and we put them in this box over here. It's called a hospital or a care facility. And when somebody's old, we put them in that box over there, and that's called an old age home or a nursing home. And when somebody dies, we take them and we put them in another kind of box. But, gosh, it's so inconvenient. So we do all that we can to make them look like they're not so dead. And suddenly, this absurd situation of the Buddha's father, Siddhartha's father, Suddhodana, becomes not so absurd at all. It becomes each and every one of our experiences. And the same happens, and it is happening more and more with spiritual practice. Sometimes a person will come along in the Zen Center and they show a lot of insight, a lot of real capacity for wisdom. And I suggest to them, I say, you should really consider becoming a monk. And almost universally, this is met with, oh, right, that's a good one. The idea of taking up practice, this kind of a practice as a life in our culture has largely evaporated. But life is a funny thing, because no matter how successful we are at avoiding these four messengers, sooner or later we will come across it. Nobody gets out alive. This is just a fact of life. That which is of the nature to be born is of the nature to die. And this is one of the fundamental points of Buddhism. This is one of the fundamental truths of existence. And as we go through our lives avoiding sickness old age, and death, we're able to deny it. We're able to avoid it. We're able to invest ourselves in the idea of the person or the situation or the environment which does not die. We spend our lives looking for the perfect education, the perfect relationship, the perfect job, the perfect situation, the perfect dress, the perfect car, the perfect house. And we completely accept that there are these things that we can have, attain, obtain, collect, that are lasting, that are permanent, that are not subject to birth and death. And each time that we begin to get some inkling, each time that we begin to have some insight, when that thing that we've got, when that object that we've obtained begins to diminish, we become distracted. We avoid this truth. That which is of the nature to be born is of the nature to die. And we begin to pursue the next thing, never facing the truth, never facing this very simple activity, the activity of plus and minus, I call it, the activity of birth and death. But sooner or later, we come into undeniable contact with this fundamental principle. Maybe a friend of ours dies. Maybe our dog has some terrible disease. We see our parents getting old. And it's very difficult. It's very painful. Because for the first time maybe in our lives, we can't look away. We can't avoid it. We can't pretend that it's not happening. But the most frightening, the most challenging, the most revealing aspect of this experience is not that it is happening to this other person, that it's happening to our pets or our family members, but it is the implication that this thing that I have always thought would be there forever will not be there forever. This implication spills over into our own lives, into our own ideas of who it is that we think we are. Because we build these on a foundation of what other people are, what other situations are. This thing that I think I am is based on what I think other things are. And I completely accept their solidity. As those things pass away, it isn't just them that passes away. It is myself that also passes away. In each and every death we experience our own death. In each and every illness, in each and every aging, we experience our own sickness, old age, and death. When these things happen so close to home, we can't avoid them. We can't get away. And maybe for the first time in our lives, we stop. We stop to investigate who it is that we think we are. What it is that we're doing with this time that maybe for the first time we realize is finite. This body arises and grows and develops and turns and passes away. How do you manifest in this moment? This practice that we engage in here, Zen meditation, is simply taking this initial insight, this first stopping, and allowing it to grow. Like planting a seed in a fertile garden, we allow this perspective, this stillness, this wisdom to expand and to shine a light throughout our lives, on our relationships, on our work, in our everyday moment-to-moment thoughts. As we ask, being aware of this fundamental activity, this fundamental point, that which is of the nature to be born is of the nature to die. How do I manifest in this moment? What is there to be done? How do I manifest? All of the rules and all of the sutras and all of the practices of Buddhism come down to this single question. Recognizing this activity in all things, how do I manifest in this moment? Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.